Hey man, welcome back!
Hey guys, glad you can join LeBuck's ring. Today will be much more fun, because we are going to create all the necessary ground passes. Then we will add one more asset to the scene, the leaves. So let's dive right into this episode. Since it's a rainy scene, we want the impression that the water on the ground is moving. We will do that using an animated noise. Let's create the noise first. Type fast and choose the fast noise. View it.
YAARRRR, what's in that there grog anyways?
So the first thing we want to do now is go to the image tab and make sure it has the right resolution. I chose the same resolution as the ground texture, 3008 by 2000. And set the bit depth to float 16. Go back to the noise tab and check discontinuous. For the details, choose 6. For the scale, choose 80. Now since we want this to be animated, we're gonna set those two values here. Set the CV to 0.6923, and this is actually the more important one. Let's set this to 0.2047. This will actually animate the noise. So let's play this and you should be seeing some animation going on. Now we want to use this as a bump map. So append a create bump map, toggle off the navigator, and select the create bump map node. Then choose float 16. I will leave the settings for now because I want to show you how it looks in a default state. After the create bump map, you need a bump map node in order to tell Fusion that this is going to be a bump map.
There's a confusion on the terminology of bump mapping, so be careful when people tell you something. In Fusion, we have 3 kinds of bump mappings. One is the height map, a grayscale image that you might be familiar with if you're coming from 3D. Then there's the bump map, which is actually what Fusion's Create Bump Map tool gives you. And although it looks like a normal map, it is actually a bump map. And finally there's the normal map, the one that the renderer provides you in the normal channel. So be careful when people tell you something about bump mapping.
Don't forget to switch the source to bump map. Then drop in a reflect material and drop in a replace material as well. Hook in our objects and let's also pipe in the reflect material. If you view this now, you will see that everything is white. This is because we haven't assigned anything to the material yet. We can go ahead and start applying a color. For that, we use a background tool, and since we only need a color information, we can reduce the resolution to 128 by 128 just for the performance and switch to float 16. Now, if you hook this into the material, it will be automatically assigned to the background slot. Alternatively, if you press Alt while hooking in a node, once you release it, you will get this list where you can choose from all available target slots. The bump map of course goes into the bump map texture slot. Now we still can't see anything because we have no HDR environment map which is needed in order to see reflections. On the left side, you can see this box which says HDRI ground. This is where we place our HDR map. Let's zoom out and zoom back at the HDR map. Copy the wireless node. Then navigate back and Ctrl-Shift-V to paste in an instance. Let's bring a second viewer in to view our HDR image. And after a HDR image, you always need a sphere map node. This basically maps an image to your environment, which you can now hook into the reflect material. Hit Alt and from the list choose Reflect Color Material. Now you can see we get our nice reflections. It doesn't look too bad, but we're gonna tweak this. And in order to be able to judge and see what we are actually doing here, we better get this thing rendered already.
Hey DJ, yes, please. Play some music, will ya? Silent air doesn't go so well with rum.
So append a renderer 3D. And let's view it right away. This doesn't look too shabby, but I want to show you something. The renderer in its default state comes set as software renderer. Now watch closely what happens if I switch to the much faster OpenGL renderer. You can see that the highlights became dull, basically because they get clamped. You can easily check that at the bottom here while hovering over a color. You can read values which go barely over with 0.12. If we switch to software renderer again, the values go much higher. So why you think does this happen? It's actually nothing big, but many times overseen by new users because it's kinda hidden in this drop down here, where it says texturing. In its default state, it comes with 8-bit integer set, which means that all incoming textures, whether they are 32-bit or whatever bit, they will be all treated as 8-bit integer and therefore you will get clamped results. So always switch this to source at any time and you can see now that you get the same results as with the software renderer. Now let's tweak a few more things here from the top to the bottom. Open the output channel dropdown and activate super sampling. When you activate the super sampling, also make sure that you activate the high quality switch here. I recommend you to leave this on all the time. If it's really just timing or animation you want to approve, you can always deactivate this and turn on auto proxy mode. But as soon as it's related to visual feedback like quality things that you need to tweak, always switch to high quality mode. Next drop down is the super sampling. Here you can see the super sampling rate is set to 8. This is the default state and in my opinion it's a little bit high. The higher this value is, the more blurry your image will be. In most cases I keep this at 5. The lower you go, the sharper your image will become, but you risk getting flickering. So whenever you have fine details, fine lines or particles, etc., you want to keep this value low. Now for the reconstruction filter, I prefer using the triangle. Now according to some technical directors, this is the most neutral filter. Okay, so next thing we want to set is the image tab. Just set the bit depth to float 16. And one more thing I like to do, many people like to use the big tile display for the nodes. For me, them tiles take too much space, so I usually use the small ones. Just for the renderer, I like to choose show and then show type picture. So let's tweak our reflection a little bit. Now it looks pretty good, but we can do better. It looks already very wetty though, so perhaps it might look good like this, I don't know. I haven't tried this one yet. So let's see what we can do. First, I want to add a sort of a micro noise. And to do so, just append a filter, change the filter type to noise and crank up the power to 10, which is the maximum value. Uncheck this animated checkbox here, otherwise the result will look like a render without enough reflection samples or something like that. If it's not enough noise, you can simply copy and paste the filter node and click the randomize button a few times. If it's still not enough, you can even paste in a filter after the create bump map. View it, and this will give you a much stronger result. So if you check the render now, let's put this into the second viewer and turn it off for a second just to compare. You can see it's much stronger now. Let's tweak our reflect material a bit. Set the fall off to 4 And go back to the filter. I forgot to click the randomize button. Sorry about that. And we can also tweak the HDR map. Don't underestimate this one. It can have great impact to your reflections. By rotating your HDR map, you can get a totally different look. For example, let's set the X rotation to 1.818. For the Y, use minus 294.54.
What about the Z rotation?
Hey man, give him some time.
Shut up, I didn't talk to you.
And for the Z rotation, use minus 20. Now, this looks much more dramatic, so I like this. What about you?
Yeah, I like
This
it.
doesn't look too shabby.
I like it too. Ah, yeah.
But what else can we do? As you can see now, the reflections look really sharp. We can fake glossy reflections by adding a blur node to our HDR image. We're gonna raise the blur size to about 19. Additionally, we can tint our HDR image to match our mood. Set the tint to 0.496 and the strength to 0.313. Now at this point, I want to make the bump a little bit stronger by setting it to 2.857. Okay, great. This looks like our first pass. Wasn't that easy? So I'm gonna play this through so the Fusion can catch this and we can then watch it smoothly. And I will be back in a second. Okay, back, and this is how our pass looks at the moment. And yeah, I forgot to remove the skull from our first session, so let's do that right away. You can leave it here though, because we might need it as a reference later on. So let's get going and create our second pass. So for the second pass, we copy all the nodes here over, including the reflect, the replace, and the renderer. And let's also hook in our objects. Create a router and hook it into the replace material. Move the router down a bit to make some space. Hook in the bump map. And also copy over the background tool and hook it into the background slot.
Hey, waitress, bring me the slot menu.
And we're gonna use the same HDR image. Branch out from the sphere map tool, and again, this goes into the reflect color material slot. Let me remind you, you create router by hitting Alt and then clicking on a pipe. If we render this now, we should get the same result as in the first pass. This time though, we're gonna do something different. We're gonna use the ground texture, create a bump map from that, and then we mix it with the noise bump texture here. Remember the ground mask that we've created before? Yes, that one. We're gonna use that too. So here back at the loader section, we want to get a copy of this ground mask and the ground texture. So let's copy them wireless nodes and bring them over. Control-Shift-V. Put the ground texture into this box and the mask
Where, man? Where?
into this one here. For now, let's create the bump map from this texture. Select it and append a create bump map. As always, put it to float 16. Put the scale to 7.14295. Append a merge and drop in a blur node. Now we're gonna improve our normal map using a technique I showed before in my other tutorials. Basically what we do, we take our normal map
And then we create a blurred version of it.
and then we merge them back together using the overlay apply mode. That's how you merge normal maps. By doing so, your bump effect will look much better. You can tell once you apply it to your object. Try it out next time. So I want to blur this a little bit more. Set it to 9.04. And let's just copy our micro noise filter node here and paste it in here. Time to combine our bump maps. First, make some space.
Hear my words. Best seaweed in the seven seas.
then add a merge node after the create bump map node here.
That's some fine booty. YAAARRR!
And then you hook this filter into the foreground slot of this merge. Set the apply mode to overlay. And you should be seeing your combined version now. Let's render this. Okay, this doesn't look much different, so let's tune this. This pass, I don't want it to be too detailed or noisy. So let's remove the filter here and one of them filters here. Then reduce the overlay amount of the ground texture a bit. Let's set it to 0.147 and check out a different frame. Okay, now it's time to use our ground mask. This will make a difference. We're gonna use it to control our reflect intensity. Just grab this mask and Alt release, choose reflection intensity material. Bang! So we tweak this further now. Select the material and change the fall off to 2. And the glazing strength to 1. Okay, great guys, now no time to lose, jump straight to the next pass, the reflect pass. This one will add more crispness to our ground. You will see what I mean later. So same thing with this, we copy the whole thing here over.
Hey there, beauty. Wanna shiver my timbers?
Move it in place and hook in our objects. This time I don't want the noise to be animated. Let's remove it by setting the CD rate of our noise back to 0. The filter stays untouched. Then we're gonna branch out here and hook it in our merge node where we combine our normal maps just like before. Let's take care of the material. First, view the renderer. Hook in our HDR image first. Then grab a copy of the background. Again, the background tool automatically gets assigned to the background color slot. And finally, hook in the ground mask and plug it into the reflection intensity material. Now basically we have the same pass just without animation.
Now we're gonna do something special.
Hi, remember the good old days when we had to animate waterfalls using color recycling? Using the pseudo color tool, you can create just that effect and feel retro again. Yeah, old methods always find their way back.
Between the merge and the bump map, we apply a pseudo color. And you can immediately see that something strange is happening.
What's going on, my hearty?
What happened?
Don't worry, let's tweak this. First thing, go to the blue channel here and uncheck it. Then go to the red channel and set the red frequency to -10. Set the mean value to 0.9666 and the amplitude to 0.9428. Check the rep and move to the green channel. Set the frequency to -7.809, the mean to 0.761 and the amplitude to 0.18. Now the magic happens when you adjust the phase. You can create some animation by shifting the colors. Drop the pseudo color node into the viewer. We can animate the face using an expression. In the red channel, right-click on the phase ribbon and choose Expression. Type time divide 500 and hit play. You can see that it moves very gently.
Are you trying to horse-waggle me? I'll have you walk me plank. Get him out of here! By the end of your cutlass! Aye, aye, Captain.
Then in the green channel, do the same. Right-click on the phase ribbon, choose Expression, and this time type time. This means advance one integer per frame. Great, so let's move on to the next pass, the Diffuse Pass. Let's copy the replace material and the renderer. Paste them into their boxes. And then again, hook up the objects with the replace material. This time we will be using a blend material, so drop in a blend. Then we take our ground mask again and hook it into the blend's specular intensity and the specular exponent. Next, as you can see, we need the ground diffuse out. So let's grab another copy. Bring it over and paste it in here as an instance. And hook it into the blends material color slot. At this point, let's replace and view the material. Next, we copy the bump map node over and we hook in the normal map. Create a router and align it. And this belongs, of course, into the bump slot. Now go into the blend material, open the specular dropdown, and set the specular intensity to 0.1. Okay, now in this pass here, we're gonna actually use lights. Drop in a merge 3D. Remember, holding shift and dragging a node onto the pipe will insert it. Next, drop in an ambient light. Now before we had ambient occlusion in Fusion, an ambient light was pretty much useless. Now things have changed a bit. So hook the ambient light into the merge 3D, then create a spotlight. The spotlight is going to be our key light. Hook it up. And then drop the merge 3D into the second viewer and make sure it's set to perspective, just so we have a nice overview over our scene. Let's take care of our lights now. First, the ambient light. Set the ambient light color to 0.086, the green to 0.127, and the blue to 0.14. Next, the spotlight. First, we set the position of the light. Type exactly the same values as I do. For the X offset, use 2.838. For the Y, use -0.075 and the Z 1.804. As for the rotation, -2.788. The Y is set to 64.483 and the Z we set to -2.517. Let's view our renderer. And this time, since we are using lights, we actually have to turn on, yes, the light and shadows. Select the spotlight and go back to the Controls tab. First, we change the color. Set the red to 0.46, the green to 0.6, and the blue to 0.66. The intensity to 5.257. Now we change the decay type to quadric. This will give you a realistic light fall off. The decay rate set to 0.614. The penumbra angle to 20. Good. I just noticed we haven't plugged in our stones. No panic. Just go back to our loader section. copy the stones wireless and bring it over and paste an instance in here. Hook it in and bang, now everyone is happy. Great, diffuse pass is done. Now the only pass left to create is the technical pass and the bump normal pass. So for the technical pass, we bring in the tech pass scene. Now the reason it has its own scene box is because for the technical passes, we want all our objects to be included. Why, you might wonder? Well, because we use it for things like volume fog, relighting and ambient occlusion, etc, etc. We want to have all our objects included, right? So at the moment, our scene consists of the ground and the stones. So we need to get the leaves and the skull as well. Let's go back and grab an instance of the leaf animated and the skull. Navigate back and paste an instance here. Most important is the leaf in the foreground. Let's move on and bring them objects together. Bring in a merge 3D and now we hook up the rest of our objects. View all. Okay, the leaf you can see is not placed correctly. We're gonna do this in a bit, don't worry. Let's first finalize our setup here. What we need for the world position pass is a world sphere. You can read more on this in the manual. So we use a shape 3D, which we switch to sphere and make it huge, 50 or even 100. Now copy the renderer, view it, and the reason why you can't see anything is because lighting is still activated, but we don't have no lights. If you turn lighting off, everything turns white, yes? Of course, because we have no material assigned. But all that doesn't matter because we only need the technical passes, which we're gonna activate here under output channels. So check the world position pass, the Z pass, and the normal pass. And for now, activate the super sampling as well. So let's check our channels to make sure everything is working. As you can see, we have our normals, the position, and the Z depth. Now we take care of the leaves. Navigate back to our leaf animated. View the leaf. Problem solving time. As you can see, the viewport is black. This is because, remember we were viewing the point position pass channel? And if you switch to a 3D node without first switching back to the RGB channels, your viewport will be black. So remember, before you switch to a 3D view, make sure you switch your 2D viewer to RGB channels. And then if you view your 3D object, everything is back to normal.
Hey, I didn't know that.
So what do we do with our little leaf here? First, we want to position it. Of course, I already have the coordinates, so let's just apply them in order to save time. Add a transform 3D. Then we could add a merge 3D here. Or wait, since this is temporary, let's just hook it into our existing scene, just so we can position our leaf.
Some heavy rain out there.
Oh, I forgot my umbrella.
Why you need an umbrella, you idiot? You're on a ship.
Mamma mia, even he's on a ship. He gonna go outside and have a good view with the umbrella and maybe see some fish. Bellissimo.
Who the hell are you? Are you Italian or something?
Select the transform 3D and enter exactly the same values. For the X offset, enter -1.428. For the Y, enter -0.0065. And for the Z, use 0.756. Look through the camera and go to the last frame. This is where the leaf comes into view. Now the leaf is at its correct position. Sometimes we additionally have to set the pivot point. The pivot point of the leaf is actually at the object's center. However, if we add a transform 3D, it will use a world-centered pivot point. You can easily reset your pivot point by clicking here on Pick Pivot Point, hold, drag, don't release, and drag it onto your object. Sometimes it just doesn't work though, so we have to do it manually. Set the X pivot to 1.897, the Y pivot to 0.0258, and the Z to 0.013. Good. Now let's create another leaf. And the way you do this in Fusion is just awesome. Add another Transform 3D. Watch this. And branch out from this Transform 3D here to reuse its position. Drop in a Merge 3D and Shift Insert here. Bring them friends together. Now they are still overlapping, so let's change the second leaf's position. Select the second Transform 3D
and enter these settings.
So while we already here, let's animate those leaves. We are gonna use the Bender 3D for that. Add a Bender 3D after the Merge 3D. Drop it into our left viewer. For the amount, we will use a perturb modifier. Right-click on the amount slider and choose Modify with Perturb. Now, if you swing over to the Modifier tab, you can see the perturb settings. Open the drop-down and tweak our perturb. For the value set, minus 0.0285. For the randomize, set it to 18579. I know guys, these are a lot of values now, but we're almost done. So for the strength, use 0.0109. Then the wobble bubble to 2.33 and the speed set to 3.7142. Okay, let's clear the second viewer to get a smoother preview and hit play.
Is it moving?
I don't know.
Ah, it's moving, it's moving.
Shut up, you idiot! I need to focus!
You can see the leaves are moving, but let's bring this exactly further. Go back to the Bender Controls tab and set the center point to 0.0904. Perfect. Now the center point of the Bender is in the center of the leaf. One cool thing about the Bender 3D is this lonely checkbox here. Now, even though these two leaves are brought together using a Merge 3D, the Bender treats them objects separately. So every leaf has its own Bender center point at its center. If you want them to be treated as one object, you can simply check this box here.
Not there, man, there.
Ah, so many checkboxes there.
Yeah, okay, great. Let's bring this even further. Yeah, select the Bender 3D and this time we will use a perturb for the angle as well. Right click on the angle ribbon and choose Modify with Perturb. Swing over to the Modifier tab and open the second perturb modifier. Okay guys, more values, but these are the last ones. So for the value, use 5.1923. Random seed is 12554. For the strength, use 31.619. For the wobble bubble, use 8. Use the value of 8.0476. And finally, the speed. Set it to 9.9523. Now, this looks like raindrops are hitting this leaf. Awesome. Now it's time to see how it looks in our tech pass scene. But let's not forget to detach it from the ground scene first.
Step out of line and I'll...
So view the renderer and let's switch to the position channel.
You're telling me take a whole row.
See, we are slowly putting our scene together. Now for the tech passes, I recommend, of course depending on your machine's specs, to use double resolution. And the reason for that, I will show you later. For now, I will leave it just to show you what kind of problems we will encounter. Next and final pass, guys, the normal, or I should call it bump normal pass. Now don't confuse this with the normal pass we get from our output channels here. Rather, I map our ground normal map onto the ground object and render it straight out. Just so you understand, if you compare this with our regular normal pass, you can see we only have object normals. But we want the bump information. Clear the second viewer and let's see how we do this. What we need, of course, yes, you guessed it right, is a copy of a renderer. So paste it over, drop in a replace material, and now all you have to do is get your scene, hook it into a replace material, and we don't even need a material now. So just hook the normal map straight into the replace material. View it. Great. This is what we were looking for.
Hey, this is almost like treasure hunting.
That's some purple booty right there.
Okay, before we conclude this episode, let's talk performance. If you look closely, you can see that I'm not going from one replace material to another, but rather underneath it. Simply because it's faster. If you would feed one replace with the other replace and so on and so forth, it will still process something and eat performance.
Hey, buddy. You forgot to connect the replace to the end.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody is perfect, but as long as you're a pirate, it doesn't matter.
Okay guys, with that said, this concludes the second episode of LeBuck's Ring. My name is Vito and I'm gonna see you soon. Until then, enjoy what you do. See ya.